They took me to lunch at Marlowe's. White linen, polished silver, the kind of place management uses for PR photos, not personnel decisions. Brent Coulter, our CEO, kept his smile even while saying it. We're moving in a different direction, Harold. Across the table, Chase Whitman, the owner's nephew, nodded like he understood hard work. He didn't. I sat back, folded my hands. Different direction, how? Brent kept his tone light. Modernizing the shop. Chase has a background in systems efficiency. He's going to help us streamline operations. Meaning, I was being replaced. After 27 years of running this floor, keeping those machines tighter than the margins, they were handing it off to someone who'd never run a lathe. I didn't argue. I just smiled, nodded, and said, "That makes sense." Nobody at that table knew I'd already seen it coming for months. I wasn't supposed to stay long. When I walked into Nash Tool & Die in '96, I was just looking for something steady after the old aerospace shop went under. The floor was a mess. Jigs held together with duct tape, paper order forms pinned to machines, no tracking system, no quoting logic, just chaos and hope. They gave me a 2-week temp contract. I stayed for 27 years. I started documenting everything, created spec sheets, built calibration logs, made templates to quote jobs by hand, and because we didn't have computers then. Eventually, I turned that into a custom Excel quoting tool, one that let us bid tighter, faster, and more accurately than anyone around. When 2008 hit and half the shop got laid off, that quoting tool kept us afloat. We took small, ugly jobs no one else wanted, and hit every delivery date down to the hour. I trained the second shift myself, wrote the tooling schedule on a whiteboard in marker every week, kept backup paper logs in my locker just in case. That shop ran because I made it run, not because I asked to, but because someone had to. So when Brent said Chase would modernize things, I already knew what that meant. Someone who knew how to make slideshows was about to rewrite 27 years of sweat like it was obsolete. And none of them realized the system they were leaning on wasn't even theirs. 3 days after that lunch, Chase started walking the floor like he owned it. Didn't ask questions, just made observations. Clipboard in one hand, iPad in the other. He stood behind operators and timed their cycles like we were on a stopwatch. He poked at my quoting sheet too, said he couldn't trace the logic flow. I told him that was the point. It wasn't designed for him. Then I saw it. My file, Ritchie Calc V3 Final, opened on the office computer while I was off shift. The version with the formulas unprotected, someone had copied it, not just viewed it. I didn't say anything. I just changed the back-end formulas, locked the cells, and saved a new copy to my personal drive at home. 2 days later, I lost access to the shared drive altogether. Cynthia from HR said it was a file consolidation effort during the transition. Then my name was removed from the shift briefing calendar. No explanation. Just gone. Chase started calling team huddles every morning, but I wasn't invited. When I showed up anyway, he smiled and said, "Oh, I figured you were off this week." I wasn't. I was standing in the shop with grease on my boots and 3 inspection logs in my hand. That's when I knew. This wasn't about modernization. It was about erasure. And if they thought I was going to hand everything over quietly, they hadn't been paying attention all these years. The first real warning came when Trey pulled me aside during a break. "You hear they canceled the die catalog update?" he asked. That was my job, reviewing every jig and tool spec before year end. "I figured you'd just moved it," he added, hopeful. I hadn't. They just cut it without telling me. Later that day, I caught Chase giving a tour to a pair of guys in slacks and sport coats. Not suppliers, buyers. That much was obvious. They stopped by the CNC bay, pointed at my printouts taped to the wall, and Chase said, "We're in the process of integrating a digital workflow. I've already mapped most of the legacy systems." Legacy systems. That's what they called 27 years of handwritten calibrations, manual overrides, and formulas I built on my own time. That night I checked the logs. My Excel file had been downloaded again, this time under Chase's login. Then I saw a new file name, CW Quoting Tool V1. He'd cloned it. And that's when the pieces started falling into place. This wasn't just about cutting costs. This was a setup, a repackaging of my work with his name on it. And if the rumors about the shop being sold were true, then he wasn't just replacing me, he was monetizing me. I drove home and opened my oldest backup drive. There it was when Tool Calc Orig 03 from March 2002, dated and time-stamped, same logic, same formulas. My handwriting scanned into the instructions tab. I pulled the invoice from when I bought the Excel license myself, before Nash Tool and Die ever gave me a company machine. It was mine, and there was no paper trail transferring any of it to the company. I called an old friend, Barry Lynn, used to be a machinist, now runs contracts and patents for a tool maker downstate. He looked it over and said, "You've got a case." He told me to encrypt my latest version, lock down the formulas, and file for provisional ownership of the estimator logic. Just enough to hold legal ground if it came to it. So I did. Then I started watching. Not sabotaging, just observing. And what I saw was a lot of surface-level fixes. Chase was talking about digitizing, but he didn't understand the floor. Didn't know which machines needed manual overrides or why we staggered warm-up times on the 720S. And he sure as hell didn't know why I built custom offsets into the quotes for thermal drift. But he was copying anyway. Trey came to me looking uneasy. "They're bringing in reps from Forgewell next week," he said. "Word is Chase is presenting the new quoting system." "New," I muttered. "Meaning mine." He nodded once. I asked, "You still got the backup logs?" He did. Trey kept copies of every quoting file update on a private USB just in case something got overwritten. The kid paid attention. That's why I trusted him. We met in the break room before shift, shared a stale coffee, and I laid it out. I wasn't going to sabotage anything, but I also wasn't going to hand over my life's work without a fight. Trey didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." I smiled. "Everything you've ever backed up," and silence. That Friday, Chase stood in front of the Forgewell suits with a projection screen and a spreadsheet titled CW Systems Optimizer. I stood in the back and watched him explain my calculations like he'd written them. But I wasn't angry. I was just waiting, because the clock had already started ticking, and none of them knew what was about to expire. Over the weekend, I finalized it. The latest version of the quoting tool, the one Chase copied and was now running on a formula layer I'd rewritten from scratch. It looked the same, operated the same, but deep inside it was tied to a simple rule. Without the correct digital license key, the output would auto-fail starting the following Monday. Not crash, not corrupt, just fail. All quotes would default to a rejection notice. License expired. Contact developer for access. Legal, clean, traceable. No one could say I'd sabotaged anything. It was just a system enforcing ownership. I stored the key on a secure server Barry helped me register, backed up the full file structure, watermarked the estimator logic with embedded timestamps. Then I sat back and waited. Monday morning rolled around. 9:06 a.m. Trey texted me. "Shop floor is frozen. Quotes are erroring out. Chase is red." By 9:17, I got a call. "Block number." I picked up and didn't say a word. Brent's voice came through, tight and clipped. "Harold, there's an issue with the system. You have any idea what's going on?" I kept my tone even. "I thought I'd been let go." "You were, but this system, it's not functioning." "No," I said, "it's functioning exactly how I designed it to." Silence on the line. I let it hang. Then, "You built this independently?" "Yes. Started it before I ever clocked in here. The documentation's dated, the license was personal, and there's never been a formal transfer of rights." "You're saying Nash doesn't own the quoting system?" "I'm saying I built it, updated it on my own time, and never signed it over." Brent's tone shifted. "I'm sure we can work something out." I stayed quiet. "I mean, we need it. This acquisition, Forgewell expects this system." "That's not my problem," I replied. He asked, "What do you want?" "I want proper credit and a license fee, and I want my system decoupled from Chase's name in every presentation going forward." "That's negotiable," Brent muttered. "Good," I said, "because Forgewell will be negotiating with me directly starting today. They've already reached out." The silence was longer this time. He knew he'd been outplayed, legally, calmly, quietly, just like I used to fix the floor when nobody else could. That afternoon, Forgewell postponed the walkthrough. By the end of the week, their legal team had requested a full audit of all proprietary systems, and my name came up fast. By Friday, Chase was pulled into a closed-door meeting with Brent and Cynthia from HR. Trey said he didn't come out for an hour. He left that day with a cardboard box and a frozen expression. No announcement, no farewell email. Just gone. Word on the floor was they were realigning leadership priorities. The truth, Forgewell didn't want someone pretending to innovate. They wanted the guy who actually built it. Me. I didn't go back to the floor right away. I didn't have to. Brent called again the next week, softer this time. He offered me a consulting contract, independent, remote, name on the tool, royalties included. I said I'd think about it, but I already knew my answer, because I wasn't going back to save them. I was going forward to build something that couldn't be taken. Forgewell's VP of Operations reached out to me directly, said they'd reviewed the tool, cross-checked the file history, and confirmed what I already knew. It was mine. They didn't care that I wasn't some PowerPoint guy. They cared that the system worked, and no one else could explain it properly. We met at a diner off the bypass. Nothing fancy. Just black coffee and 2 binders on the table. One was their acquisition paperwork. The other was a contract. They weren't just offering to buy the shop, they wanted me to consult on all future quoting systems they rolled out to their regional partners. Remote, flexible, 6 figures plus royalties, full IP control. I flipped through the pages slowly, then closed the folder. "I have one condition," I said. The VP raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I pick my team." He nodded without hesitation. "You know who's loyal?" "I do." The week after, I walked back into the shop, but not as an employee. Brent barely looked up from his office window. Trey met me by the old tool cage. "Word is, you're in charge now," he said with a grin. "Not in charge," I said. "Just here to clean up." Together, we pulled the backup logs, restored the proper formulas, scrubbed Chase's changes from the tool, reset everything to version 1. By the time Forgewell's inspectors came through, the numbers lined up. The system passed with 100% accuracy. Brent kept his title, but everyone knew what it meant. Ceremonial. No decisions, no real power. The floor workers started calling me Mr. Ritchie again. Not because they had to, because they remembered who built this place when it was falling apart. 2 months later, I didn't walk back into the shop at all. I was too busy setting up my own place, a small office in a converted garage on the edge of town. One desk, one machine, one whiteboard, and 3 names on the paperwork. Mine, Trey's, and Barry Lynn's. We weren't building a company. We were building a buffer, a lifeline for shops like ours that got caught between old-school grit and corporate gloss. Word got around fast. By summer, we had 5 contracts from independent tool shops who didn't want to lose their legacy systems to optimization plans. Brent called once, asked if we'd be open to coming back in for training. I told him we'd put it on the calendar after Forgewell paid the next licensing cycle. Then I hung up and watched the sun go down over my own shop window. First time I'd seen the sky at 5 p.m. in years. I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd finally clocked out on my own terms. I heard Chase move to a different city. Last I was told, he was trying to get a consulting firm off the ground, pitching his experience in workflow transition and digital integration. But in this trade, word travels. People knew what really happened. You don't last long when you take credit for work you can't understand. Forgewell blacklisted him from future vendor lists. He never got a reference from Nash Tool. And when his name came up in a regional manufacturing expo, the head of purchasing at one of the biggest tool companies said it flat. "We don't deal with suits who get shown up by the guy they fired." Brent Coulter stayed on after the acquisition. Forgewell gave him a title, Director of Legacy Integration, but no team, no decisions, and no impact. He went from calling all the shots to hosting walkthroughs and answering to procurement. I saw him once at a manufacturing event. He gave me a nod from across the room. Not a wave, not a smile, just a nod. And I returned it, because I wasn't bitter. I wasn't interested in payback. I already got it, quietly, professionally, and with a signed contract. I kept the first jig I ever made for Nash Tool, an ugly little clamp that only worked if you hit it just right. It's on my desk now, rust on the edge. A reminder, systems can be copied, titles can be handed out, but value, real, earned value, that can't be faked. I don't need my name on a wall or a plaque in a lobby. I've got Trey running quoting ops, Barry running legal, and 5 new clients lined up for next quarter. And most days, I'm home before dinner. The CEO let me go. The owner's nephew tried to take everything I'd built. But what they didn't know was that I never needed a title to be the backbone. I just needed time to prove what I already knew.